Okay, guys, so we're going to be working on the quadratic formula and the discriminant today. The nice thing about this is, guys, this is a way to solve a quadratic equation no matter what. If it doesn't factor, this works. If it factors, this works. This is the end-all, be-all, easy, fail-safe, works every time method. If you forget everything else, when you get to the actual EOC and they ask you to solve a quadratic equation, this works no matter what you do. And guys, you're going to have to do this in geometry. So if you can't remember anything to do with factoring, you can always use this. However, when you get to Algebra 2, you got to factor again. But this is just going to be used, especially when something won't factor, this is going to be used. So here is the formula. It is based on a quadratic equation where it's in order, where you have the x squared, the x, and the c on this side, and it must be equal to 0, just like we've been solving using factoring. This is the formula we have. It's going to use this a, b, and c, these numbers that are in front of here, in order to fill in this stuff into a formula. It's a plug and chug kind of formula. You plug in the numbers, you plug it into the calculator, you get answers. That's all it is. It's arithmetic. You just got to know what they are. Now, this thing underneath here is called the discriminant. Please look at this and please make sure you understand it's the thing under the radical. Not when you take the square root of it, it's the thing under the radical. That discriminant decides how many answers you have. This thing right here decides how many answers. If that discriminant is going to turn out to be positive, every single time you have a positive discriminant, there are going to be 2 solutions. 2 every single time. 2 solutions. Right? If that discriminant, the number under the radical, turns out to be 0, guys, can 0 have a positive case and a negative case? No. So when you have 0 as your discriminant, you're only going to get one answer, one solution. Now, if the discriminant is negative, grab your calculators. Do 5 negative and hit the square root button. 5 negative, hit the square root button. Doesn't work, does it? You can't take a square root of a negative number. It's not possible until you get into what's called imaginary numbers, but we're not dealing with that. That's not till Algebra 2. Okay? So this is going to have 0 solutions. So if the thing under the radical, that discriminant is negative, there are no solutions at all. 0 solutions. You're going to have to know this because you're going to have to know how many answers to give me to each problem that we do, and knowing that discriminant is going to decide that. Okay, any questions before we actually start using it? Okay, guys, here you go. So here's your first problem. I need an A equals, a B equals, and a C equals because it's already equal to 0. It's already in order, it's already good. So we need the number from in front of the x squared. What's here that's not written? 1. What's in front of the B? Oh, excuse me, what's in front of the x? I apologize. -2 for the B. I apologize, I switched the 2. And what is the C at the end? -35. That's the numbers. Now the only thing we have to do is plug and chug, it's called. You're going to plug in the numbers, you're going to work it out to a final answer. Here's how it's set up. When we set these up, we're always going to say x equals, because that's what we're solving for, guys, is what x is equal to. And then we're going to plug it in like this. It is going to be the opposite of, and you always put it as a negative sign, bless you. You put parentheses, and you put the number for B inside of here. So it's the opposite of -2 plus or minus the square root of B squared, so that's going to be -2 squared minus 4. Guys, the number is always 4 right there. It's always -4. There's no other number that ever goes there. It's always -4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is -35, all over. Guys, the line goes under the whole thing on that side of the equation. All over 2 times A, which in this case would be 2 times 1. Just on the first, plug into the formula. Does anybody have a question? Just on the plugging in. Okay. So I need you to get your calculators. All right, we are going to work out what is under the radical, and we're going to deal with this opposite sign. So we're going to write out the x equals What is the opposite of negative 2? 2. That's it. Plus or minus the square root of. Now we're going to grab our calculators. Okay, to type this, guys, type it with us the first time just to make sure. I'm going to go through the whole thing the first time just to make sure you can type it. It would be 2 negative, and then hit the square button. 2 negative squared minus 4 times 1 times 35 negative equals. What does that give you as the discriminant underneath that parentheses? What was it? 144. All over 2 times 1 would be 2. Do we need to type it again? Yes or no? Yes, thank you for saying something. Guys, I'll write out the numbers out here, how you would type them in the calculator. Pay attention, let's get this right. It would be 2, and then you hit the negative key, which is that plus minus key. Squared is the little x with the 2 on it. Then it's going to be minus 4 times 1 times 35 negative, and then you hit equals. Everybody better? Did everybody get to 144 now? Try that. Make sure you can get there. Anybody have a question about typing that in? Anything about it? Okay, so the next step would be to take the square root of 144. Grab your calculators, hit 144, hit the square root button. What's that give you? 12. Perfect. So we now have x equals 2 plus or minus 12 all over 2. Okay, guys, do y'all understand the plus or minus means we have to do 2 separate equations? Okay, we got to do the positive case and we got to do the negative case. So here's how we split it up. X equals 2 plus 12 all over 2, and x equals 2 minus 12 all over 2. That's how you split it up. Okay. So do the arithmetic. What's 2 plus 12? 14. And what's 14 divided by 2? 7. That's it. Now we got to do the other one. That's first case. Now we got to do the other one. 2 minus 12 would give us what? Negative 10. And negative 10 divided by 2 puts us at negative 5. There we go. So our answers are a set of numbers. The negative number is going to go first, then the positive number, and that is the solution to those. Those are the solutions to that quadratic equation. Does anybody have any questions before we do one that doesn't turn out so pretty? Because that one turned out nice because it had a perfect square. There's no decimals involved. That one actually would factor. You could do that by factoring, but they ask you to use quadratic formula. Everybody's good? Okay, let's keep going. Here's the next one. On the next one, what's different about this problem than the other problem? Look at it. What? It's not equal to 0. That's the first thing you got to notice. It's not equal to 0. Before I can pull out A, B, and C, I've got to rearrange it so that it is in standard form from the highest power down to the lowest power, and it has to equal 0 in order to use the quadratic formula or to factor it, but it's got to equal 0. Once it equals 0, then I can pull out my A equals, my B equals, and my C equals. In this case, what would A be? 15. What is B? Negative 8. Good job. And what is C? Negative 4. Good. Good. Catch those negatives. It matters. Okay, now that we have our A, B, and C, we're going to have to go through and plug it into our formula. It always starts the same. X equals the opposite of B, which in this case would be -8, plus or minus the square root of B squared, which would be -8 squared, minus 4 times A, which is 15, times C, which is -4, all over 2 times 15. 2 times A. It always goes back over 2 times A, guys. Alright, anything on that? I don't have a lot of examples, so you gotta ask as we go, guys. I only got 4 of these because they take longer, so I didn't want to give you tons of examples, but I also want to make sure you get questions answered. Anything so far? Yeah, please.
So would you multiply it by -4, is that?
Where at? Here on the end?
No, it's in the middle.
This? No, that's -4.
Oh, so you just multiply.
Yep. So when we type it, I'll go over that in just one second. First of all, what is the opposite of -8? 8 plus or minus the square root of. Okay, let's type this thing on the inside again. Let's type it. I'll do it one more time while I write out the whole thing. It's going to be 8, and then you hit the negative key. Then you hit the squared key. Then you're going to do -4 times 15 times 4 negative, and then you're going to hit equals. That's the discriminant, the number that's under the radical. What is that number this time? 304? That's not going to be a perfect square, guys, just telling you ahead of time. All over 2 times 15 is 30. Does anybody have any questions on the part that's the discriminant? Typing it, did that work that time with the -4? Did that work? Yeah? Okay, just making sure. Anybody have any questions or concerns about that? Okay, here we go. Grab your calculators. You're going to take the square root of 304. Take the square root of that, guys. You're going to need it to 2 decimal places. Okay? Hit 304, hit the square root button. You need it to 2, it's not a nice number, guys. I'm telling you ahead of time, so I'm telling you to do it to 2 decimal places. What's that going to be to the 100th place? 17.44. What's after the 3? A 5, so it rounds up, so it's 17.44. Okay, here we go. Let's write out our 2 equations. X equals 8 plus 17.44 all over 30. X equals 8 minus 17.44 all over 30. Oh, you have got to type these correct very carefully. I'm going to tell you right now, someone is going to mess this up. I need you to type this with us to see why this is an issue. Okay, try typing the first one. 8 plus 17.44 divided by 30 equals. See what you get. Okay, what'd you get for an answer? I got different answers. Here's why, guys. If you type this on the calculator and you just type 8 plus 17.44 divided by 30, the only thing it's going to divide by 30 is the 17.44. It's only dividing the second number by that. You have to go ahead and add these together, or you have to put the equal sign after. Most people do better if they just add these together first, which is going to make it 20, is that 5? No. Is it 25.44? Okay. Then divide it. That's going to get you the right answer every time, which in this case is going to be 0.80 something. See what it rounds to. 80 what? 48, so it'd round up to 5. So 0.85. Thank you. Thank you for giving me that so I can know what to round it to. Nice. Same thing on this one. I would go ahead and subtract that first. When you do 8 minus 17.44, when you do 0.44, but what goes in the front? 9. It has to be negative, right? Negative 9.44. Now do negative 9.44 divided by 30. It's going to be negative point something. What was it? 3 what? 3 1. 3 1 4, so it'd stay 3 1. Good. Okay. A 3 1 with a 4 after it would stay at 3 1. So we put our answers in braces. Guys, decimals go in braces too. It's still solutions to your equation. And they are 0.31 and 0.85. That would never factor. You could not solve that problem by factoring. That would be a nightmare. Well, it may not even factor ever. Guys, you use the quadratic formula on purpose for problems that don't factor. That's what this is for numbers that turn out ugly. That's why they created it. Okay, and it works every time. If it can if it can have solutions, this is the way you find them. Okay, guys, here we go. Next one. What's different about this one? Oh, it's still not equal to 0, but which one's they over on the other side? Not the constant. What's over there? Where is that term going to go? In the middle. That's the W, it's the B, it's going to go in the middle. When you minus 15W and minus 15W, you're going to have to put it from the highest power down to the lowest power. So it's going to be 25W squared minus 15W plus 2 equals 0. You cannot put them out of order, then your A, B, and C will be out of order and it'll be incorrect. So be very careful about that. So in this case, your A is going to be the 25 from in front. Your B is going to be the negative 15 in front of the W. And your C is going to be the 2 from the back, the constant. Okay, so let's go right here. When you see this, we're going to go ahead and set up X equals. We're going to plug it into our formula, which is the opposite of B, so it's the opposite of negative 15 plus or minus the square root of B squared, so it's going to be negative 15 squared minus, guys, that minus 4 is always minus 4. It's not ever any other number. That minus 4 is part of the formula. Then it's times A, which is 25, and times C, which is going to be 2, all over 2 times A, which is 2 times 25. Bigger number on the bottom this time. So if you take care of the opposite of the B first, that's usually the best thing to do. It will make your life better. You will not mess it up. So the opposite of negative 15 is going to be 15 plus or minus the square root of something all over 50. So grab your calculators and type it, guys. I'll say it. I'm not going to write it down this time, but I'll say it. I'll wait until everybody's done writing so they're ready to go with us. Okay, try typing this. 15 negative squared minus 4 times 25 times 2 equals. I'm going to say it one more time. 15 negative squared minus 4 times 25 times 2 equals. Should give you 25, I think. 25. So from here, guys, what's the square root of 25? 5. Cross it out, put a 5 on the outside. We're going to take it and we're going to redo this to say 15 plus 5 all over 50. The other one is going to be x equals 15 minus 5 all over 50. So again, I see, I don't know what that is. 15 plus 5 is going to be 20. And do 20 divided by 50. 20 divided by 50. What's that give you? 0.4. Perfect. We do the same thing on the other side. We've got 15 minus 5, which is going to give us 10. And then you're going to type in 10 divided by 50. Point what? 2. So when you put them in brackets or braces, that's going to be 0.2, comma, 0.4. Okay, guys, last one. So we've had a discriminant that's turned out to be positive every time so far, so we've gotten 2 answers. Don't forget that if you, sorry, I'm laughing at this, you know. So if you can get one that's 0, just remember there's no plus or minus. I didn't have one of those in here just because I wanted to see as many. Most of them have 2 answers, guys, most of them. But I did put one in here that I think this one ends up, it ends up at no solution. Let's see. So A equals what? 1. B equals what? And C equals 5. So there's your numbers. We plug it into our formula, which is x equals, it's the opposite of B, which is negative 3, plus or minus the square root of negative 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5 all over 2 times 1. Get to there, get the writing. Guys, if you don't get the writing part of it right, none of it matters. So write your formula carefully. Write it neatly so that you can understand it. I know some of y'all like to cram it into spaces and write sloppy and all that stuff. Guys, you're going to mess yourself up on this if you do that. I get it. I have a 18-year-old that still writes in chicken scratch, but come on. Okay, the opposite of negative 3 is 3, plus or minus the square root of. Now type that on your calculator. I'm not even going to say it this time. Are we at time?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry guys, I'll finish posting that online.